I know this is late. I know. I'm sorry. Hi, welcome to my reading journal. This is for February and March because I didn't read enough in February to warrant a whole video about it. So I'm combining them because I didn't read much in March either. I read more than February. I'm going to blame the fact that February is such a small month. It's not. It's like 3 days difference. Life is hard. The first book I read in February was Over the Hills and Far Away, The Life of Beatrix Potter. It was really cute, and I really enjoyed learning about the life of Beatrix Potter. It was written in fragments almost, so there were certain parts where I wasn't quite sure how old she was, but it was still a very enjoyable read. Next book I read in February was The Little Old Lady Who Broke All the Rules, recommended to me by a friend. It was really cool. I'm enjoying this trend of Swedish authors writing about old people. Don't know why, but that's a subgenre that I really enjoy. This is about an old lady at a retirement home who gets together with her friends and decides to rob a bunch of places because they feel they're getting mistreated at the retirement home, which they are. But it's very funny and it's very good. The next book I read was The Radical and the Republican. It was written about the relationship between Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. It was very good, very interesting about how both of them chose to view the abolition of slavery and how both of them were working towards the advancement of Black people in America at the time, and their different approaches, how they clashed, and how they eventually became friends. And it was quite cool. That's the thumbnail. I finally got round to reading The Dante Club by Matthew Pearl. Matthew Pearl has written one of my favorite books of all time, which is The Last Buccaneer. If you haven't read it, it is about book pirates. It is so good. Please pick it up. This one, I was worried that because I had enjoyed The Last Buccaneer so much, I was going to be slightly disappointed by this. However, I was not. It's so good. It's about Dante and about Longfellow. Basically, it takes place in Boston just after the Civil War, and a series of murders take place that are inspired by different punishments within Dante's Inferno. And Longfellow is doing a translation of Dante's Divine Comedy, and he and his Dante Club realize that they have to figure out who the murderer is because they're the only ones who know how to stop him, because they are the only ones who will know what the next punishment is. So it was very, very good. 10 out of 10. Yikes. Next book I read in February was The Weight of Ink. It follows the story of three people. One, Esther, who's living in London in the 17th century. She's just moved there after her parents were killed in a fire in the Netherlands. She and her brother move to London, and she starts working as a scribe for a rabbi, which as a woman is basically unheard of. Then it follows the story of a historian who is in her 60s, about to retire, and she is unearthing these documents that they're not quite sure who wrote them, but slowly she figures out it's Esther's handwriting. And the discovery of a female scribe in the 17th century for a rabbi is very exciting. And then it follows the historian's young PhD student who starts working with her, and it talks about how these documents affect all three of them and how it connects all three of them. And it was an incredibly well-written book, and it was very moving. This is called Kill the Farm Boy. This is a fantasy book about a kid named Worstley, whose brother Bestley is sadly dead. And Worstley is chosen by this very grumpy fairy named Staff, who is dirty and just annoyed at life. And this fairy tells him, "Oh, you've been chosen for something. You're the chosen one." And so Worstley goes, "Well, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do?" And she's like, "I don't know. Go out and find a quest." And so Worstley goes, "Okay, I guess I'm going to go to this place where the castle have been all asleep for ages and no one knows why." And he takes his goat with him, who can now talk because Worstley is the chosen one. I won't say anymore, but it was also very funny, very good. I read this in one sitting. The next few deserve to be talked about as a whole. First, Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and I got the third one from work, The Winter of the Witch. This is a trilogy about a girl, Vasya, who lives in this little village in Russia and can see spirits that other people in her house cannot. And at first this is treated normally. They say, oh, leave some food out for these spirits. Not everyone can see them. She can, but she's not harmed in any way for it. She's just a little weird looking, but everyone thinks that's just Vasya. And then her father remarries a woman who can also see these spirits, but believes them to be demons. And when this priest comes into town, he also believes these spirits to be demons and is trying to cure everyone of these demons. Goes from there. There's a frost demon involved who is like trying to play the kind of emo, mysterious, aloof god, but is unable to and finds himself more and more drawn to Vasya. It's a wonderful series. It's so magical and fantastic, and it also works in a lot of medieval Russian history. So that was very exciting to a history nerd like me. My cat has joined us. Next book I read in March was The Prince by Machiavelli. What a deeply disturbing book this is. And I know people are trying to revive Machiavelli's reputation, but there's a reason he had it in the first place. Oh my gosh. He's very right, I think, about human nature, but it's a very cynical take. And I would hope that we have improved. So, you know how Marie Kondo says that there are books on your shelf that you've been meaning to read for years and you haven't read, so what's the point? Get rid of them. This is me telling you that this book sat on my shelf for approximately 3 years, and I only just now got around to reading it. But that later can come. It can come. And I'm slightly disappointed in myself that I didn't read this sooner, because it's so good. It is about Shostakovich and his life in Russia, and I had no idea about any of it. I'd listened to his music, but I didn't know anything, and it's so beautifully written, and it's just very good. This is another one that I read in one sitting because I couldn't put it down. There are basically no chapter breaks, so it makes it hard to put it down anyways. It captivated my attention the entire time. Look at another later book. I have had this sitting on my shelf for approximately 10 years, probably longer. And, you know, this is one of those that's like an Indian classic, The Village by the Sea. I just realized I didn't say the name of the other book. This is called The Noise of Time. It's by Julian Barnes. I didn't say that before. I just got very excited about it. So this one is called The Village by the Sea. And it's about these two kids, Hari and Leela, who have to earn money when their father is an alcoholic, their mother is sick, and they have to kind of take care of their younger siblings in this village in India. And it's about industrialization and how their village might be torn up by companies that are coming in who don't care about the villagers, who are going to install their factories, ruin the seaside, and ruin their little village, and how they are kind of swept up in this and the politics of life and industrialization and the ruining of the countryside. But I will say, I was worried that this book was not going to have a happy ending, because a lot of books like this don't. And it did. It had a happy ending, and that was just kind of what I needed at the moment. So, yay. Sometimes you just need happy endings. Now, this one I picked up recently. It's called The House of Broken Angels. So it's about the patriarch of this Latina family living in America. It's Broken Angels because the patriarch is called a Big Angel, and he's celebrating his birthday, and so he's invited all his family around. Everyone's coming, and then his mother dies, and it turns into a funeral, and a birthday celebration. It's about the politics and the inner workings of a family get-together. And it definitely took me up in the story. It was definitely very good. My one quibble with it is that the female characters all seemed to have the same characteristics. Next book I read was called The First Book of Calamity Weak. From what I read of the insert and the first couple chapters, I thought, oh, this is going to be like magical realism, maybe along the lines of Murakami. Calamity Weak lives in an area she is not permitted to pass the wall. She's raised by her auntie, who is her favorite, and all of her sisters. She has something like 20 sisters. It's too many sisters for one person to have, probably. Things kick off when her sister Truly leaves and goes beyond the wall and then subsequently dies. And I thought, okay, magical realism, what's beyond the wall? What's going on? 2 chapters, 3 chapters in maybe, you're starting to realize, okay, this isn't magical realism. She's in a cult and she's been brainwashed by the cult. There are a lot more twists in this book, so that's not giving too much away, but it was more kind of a psychological, not thriller, but it was just very horrifying to get your head around. It was definitely an interesting experience to read. March was a month of, oh, I'll read this later, finally reading the I'll read this later pile. So this is Prog Winter by Madeleine Albright, who is Secretary of State for President Clinton in the 90s. She actually started her life as a refugee from Czechoslovakia when the Nazis invaded. She starts with kind of the history of Czechoslovakia before the Nazi occupation and goes into some medieval history, Renaissance, early modern, the founding of Czechoslovakia, and then finally her experiences during the war, because she spent most of her childhood in the war in London. And her father was part of the Czech government in exile. This was very, very good. It talks about her own experiences in the war, mixes it with history, and she also speaks about the family members of hers that were all murdered in the Holocaust, which she didn't really even realize until a journalist here started digging into her kind of past, and that was when she found out that most of her family was murdered in the Holocaust, because her parents had not told her that was what had happened to her family. And I liked how she mixed her own memoir with the history, because you understood what was going on at the same time that she was experiencing, her own childhood, her own life. Those are all the books that I read February, March. Obviously, April will be coming soon. I'm trying to rush the last couple days of April to try and get one more book in. I have also been working on a couple more videos for Little Histories. Those should probably be up soon. Thanks for watching. Bye!